Let me just start off by saying it's been a difficult week in Albuquerque. It's been a tragic week for a number of families in our community, and just wanted to spend a little time this afternoon having a conversation with the community about some of the meetings that I've had today and throughout the week, some of the discussions I've had, highlight some of the good and decent things that have come from good people through some of these tragedies, and then maybe answer some questions if you have some of those. So today I've had a number of meetings with and visits with, I was at the hospital this morning visiting Daniel Webster, Officer Webster. The latest update on his situation just a few minutes ago is he's still in critical condition and he's still fighting for every breath. It's a tough deal. And his family's there. I got a chance to meet his mom and dad who've flown in, and got a chance to talk to his wife and just tell them that our community is pulling for Daniel, that we're praying for him, and that we're just praying for another miracle. I've been to UNMH too many times when one of our officers has been shot or injured, and I've seen miracles there happen, and we're just hoping for another miracle with Daniel. They are great doctors, and I want to thank UNMH for all that they do for our men and women at the Albuquerque Police Department. The dedicated doctors and nurses there are just absolutely wonderful. While I was there, I ran into Heather Alter, who's Steve Gorecki's daughter. Steve was the gentleman that was shot in his driveway. She's a nurse there, and she's helping take care of Officer Webster. And so that's, and she pulled me aside and we talked for a while. And she's working diligently with legislators, Nate Gentry in particular, to figure out ways that we can positively impact the situation in New Mexico when it comes to repeat offenders, when it comes to making sure that teenagers and adults are safe. And so in her time of sorrow and grief for her family, she's already starting to advocate. This afternoon I met with Dr. Kathy Finch. We know Dr. Finch's story. And with all the difficulties that she's been through, she came to my office and took the time, just weeks after her horrendous incident. And we talked about things that we can do. We talked about laws that need to change in New Mexico. We talked about taking her personal tragedy and the death of her husband and turning it into something positive. And just this afternoon I met at the home of the Garcias on a day that, tough day. And the Garcia family asked about Officer Webster, and they want to visit him at the hospital. And while they plan their daughter's funeral, they're worried about their community. And I told them that they are in our thoughts and prayers, and that our community is pulling for them. These are the kind of folks that we're dealing with here. This is a great town full of great people. And when tragedy strikes, we come together, and we're doing that right now. And the thing that strikes me as much as anything is that out of these tragic events, we're going to make things better. We have to. We have to make things better. We have to do it for our police officers, for the men and women of the Albuquerque Police Department, who too many times, have to go out and re-arrest a violent offender that they just arrested, sometimes hours before, sometimes days, weeks, or months before. We've got to make things better for a little 4-year-old on her way home from school. This cannot be a better place to be a repeat violent offender than a 4-year-old on her way home from school. We can't stand for it. We need more officers at the Albuquerque Police Department. We know that. We've got a plan for that. We need help getting that done. We have that answer. We know what to do. We've got to get help from the legislature to do that. And I didn't come here today to point fingers, folks. I didn't come here, you know, the easiest thing for elected officials to do in a situation like this is to revert right to finger pointing. I want our friends in the legislature to have the tools and information that they need to help us make, decisions. I want our officers to have the tools and manpower that they need. And if there's a frustration here at all, and there is, it's that we know the answers. We can do this. We just have to have the will and the fortitude to get it done. And, you know, nobody's responsible for the death of Lily Garcia except the criminal that shot and killed her. And nobody's responsible for Officer Webster's fight for every breath except the criminal that shot him. But it's evident to me that all these folks, and Dr. Finch alike, and Steve Gurecki's family, they've all been let down by a system that's got some holes in it. So let's get them fixed. Let's get together as a community and get these things done. I want to thank our community. We've had people step up and offer hotel rooms to the family of Officer Webster. We've had restaurants offer food. We've had two of our great local community members, you know, funeral homes offer funeral services for Lily Garcia. We've had thousands and thousands of dollars raised. We have people like Nurse Rose, who was just over getting a cup of coffee and jumped into action to try to save Officer Webster and really kept him alive until the paramedics got there. And let me tell you another story. Today I was in Daniel's room, and I don't want to say too many things about an individual's medical conditions, but when I was there, as I was walking out, I walked by another room in the ICU. And her voice said, "Hey, Mayor, can I talk to you a minute?" And I turned around, and there is an individual who is in ICU for who, I won't say the name, but apparently has a broken back, and was sitting there with all kinds of tubes and wires and everything. And he said, "Can I pray with you?" And this guy, in his time of need, said a prayer for Daniel Webster, for our community, for little baby Lily. I mean, that's the kind of folks we have in this town. And I don't want our community to lose sight of that. We live in a great city, full of great people, and from time to time in a big city like this, we have tragic things happen. But the thing that we have to do is we can't let the pain of these last few days fade away. What all too oftentimes happens is when something tragic happens, people talk about it. We all have big plans to make changes, and then as the days, weeks, and months go by, we'll lose our fervor. And we can't do that. And I can tell you, each of those folks I met with today, the Garcia family, Dr. Finch, the family of Steve Gurecki, they're not going to let their passion fade away. They told me in no uncertain terms they want to work with our office, they want to work with legislators to make these things better. The good news is, like I say, there are things we can do. There are things we can do. The answers are right there. We can get our officer ranks up with a return to work bill. A lot of reasons to say no to something like that, but the answer is right there. The answer is right here. It's on this piece of paper. We believe we could bring 100 to 150 officers back fairly quickly with this and get our numbers right back where they need to be. But there's been 100 reasons to say no to that. We need to get over that. I've got a stack of bills right here. All these bills are tough on crime laws. Every one of them died in the Senate Judiciary Committee. I'm not picking on one committee by itself, but I'm telling you, and not every bill passes muster, I get that. But these are bills to additional felonies for 3 strikes, habitual DWI offender sentencing, crimes committed against children penalties, additional violent felony penalties, DWI convictions for sentencing, increasing DWI sentencing, homicide and bodily harm. These are things we can do. These are things we can do. And we don't even have to do all of them, but we can do some of them. Talk to Dr. Finch. We need an assisted outpatient treatment bill in New Mexico. When you're one of the few states that does not have an assisted outpatient treatment bill to help the rare, and I always want to say this, mental health does not always equal violence. In fact, rarely does it. But in those rare instances where someone has a propensity to do harm to themselves or others, assisted outpatient treatment would really work. With the Supreme Court decision that came down on the no-hold bond situation, we need a constitutional amendment. We need our legislators to get that to the voters. But you know, if they do that in January, it's not going to hit the ballot box till next November. That's a year from now. We have to do things in the meantime. We're going to be working with our officers. We're going to be implementing the reforms from the DOJ and we're going to be working collaboratively to do that. But we also need to make sure that we're stepping up at the same time as a community and supporting our officers, and I want to thank our community for doing that. You're stepping up and you're working with our officers and you're telling them you support them at a time when we're making reforms, important reforms. So we can be the master of our own destiny here. We can sit by and let it go status quo. We can continue to be a place where, you know, violent offenders can find a good place to do the things that they do, or we can get together as a community and as a state and make changes, and I'm going to be advocating for that every single day. I'm going to have families standing beside us advocating for that every single day. And I know the people in the legislature, I worked with them, they're good folks. They're going to get the message, and we're going to get these changes made. Thanks.
The colleagues and Mayor, I apologize. We're going to turn this into TV instantly.
Sure.
Dennis, which one?
The one right there.
Right here? Yeah. We're going to run.
Thanks. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Mayor Barry,
Right, buddy.
Yeah.
you just listed off several of the public safety bills that failed in the legislature last year. What makes you think it's going to be any different this year? I think year after year, your elected officials around the state, there was gridlock, there's problems up in Santa Fe.
You know what's going to make it different is when the families of New Mexico make it their priority. When Lily Garcia's parents show up and start talking, when Dr. Finch shows up and starts talking, when Steve Gorecki's family shows up and starts talking, they're going to listen. And what I've offered these families is what I can offer. I can offer my experience from the time I was in the state legislature. I have a lot of folks that I know up there on both sides of the aisle. I know they'll listen to us. And I've offered them the bully pulpit from the mayor's office. But sometimes you just, the way it works is everybody is in agreement. It gets all the way through the process. It gets to one committee. And in the wee hours of the morning it dies. And there's no media in the room. And there's nobody there to see it until the next day. We're going to change that. We're going to get folks involved. We have every single seat in the legislature, all 112 seats are up this year. The entire Senate is up. The entire House is up. I recommend that as a community that we ask specific questions of every candidate running for office. Will you vote for an assisted outpatient treatment bill? Yes or no? And if you don't answer, we're going to take it as a no, and we're going to let people know about it. Will you or will you not help us get more officers on the street? Yes or no? And let's get them on record ahead of time, and then let's let the public know who stands where, and then let's hold folks accountable to that. And I'll tell you right now, there's work for me to do as a mayor. We're not perfect here. We've got work to do. We've got things that we can do at the city level as well. This isn't about just pointing a finger in one area, but some of these laws have to change. We have to get that done. And like I say, I've been in the state legislature. I've been in the state legislature, and I know that a letter from the mayor goes some way, but a letter from a family and a visit from a family that lost a 4-year-old daughter goes a lot further.
As with anything, there's always money behind it. Every single bill you introduce, there's always asking for more funding.
Right.
More funding for officers, more funding
Yep.
for the prosecutors to help put these people away. What needs to change in Santa Fe from a funding formula to make this happen? Because you can pass as many bills as you like,
Sure.
but sometimes if the money's not behind it, there's nothing.
Well, and I sat in the Appropriations Committee, so I've been in the room, and let me give you a little perspective from a legislator standpoint. When you're on the Budget Committee, or any legislator, but particularly in the Budget Committee, you've got limited resources and you've got unlimited need. So you have to prioritize. You have to, would be in a committee room and a group of folks would come in and they need DD waivers for their family members. And that's expensive, but it's important. Then a group of parents would come in and they've got children that are dealing with autism. They need help, and that's important, and that's not inexpensive. And then teachers will come in. They'd like to make a better living. And then public safety comes in. So you have to, we do have to understand that our legislators have to prioritize. But when it comes to penalties and when it comes to being a state that is, more attractive to be a violent offender or easier to be a repeat violent offender, some of those laws don't take a lot of appropriations. Those are just common sense things that we can do. And look, we didn't get here overnight. This happens over the period of years, sometimes decades. I would venture to say decades. And you don't necessarily get back overnight, but boy, you got to take that first step, and we can get back. Some of these laws that we could pass would get us a long way back in short order. And we will, we'll have to allow our legislators to hash out the details of some of these pieces of legislation, but we at least know the categories. We at least know what we need to do.
So from your perspective, Police Chief Gordon Eden made a strong statement yesterday that he's been in law enforcement here in New Mexico for years, and 20 years ago, our streets, our DA system, our law enforcement public safety did not look like this. Mm-hmm. So in your opinion, what went wrong?
You know, one thing I learned in public service, nothing goes wrong overnight. It takes time. And so it's chipping away at a law here. It's a court decision there. It's a judge that's not as strict as another judge in one location. It is a legislature that takes, that maybe they'll ramp up one set of penalties, but something else gets taken away. And so what we have to do, and what the legislators have to do, is a difficult job. And these are citizen legislators. We have to work with them and get them the voice of our community to say, these are the three things. You have to, at some point, you have to break it down into the definable steps that you can take right now. An AOT bill, we need it. Our people need it. We could avoid tragedy. We could keep our officers, from a situation where they're having to deal with someone in a mental health crisis. If it's just one time, or maybe it's 3 times, or maybe it's 10 times. This is a very small group of individuals, but we can help. We can do this. Get that thing done. Then let's talk about repeat offenders. Then let's get that constitutional amendment in place to get back where someone can be held without bond if they are a real danger to the community today. So the danger is you get overwhelmed and you can't see the whole picture. So what you do is you break it down into component pieces, you tackle one at a time. I know we can do this. I know we can do this.
Mayor, you said you know your message will be heard. Have you contacted anyone, specifically individuals, to talk about how to move forward? I've
been on the phone with legislators this week, yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, some of the language I can't repeat. But they're people that I know and I trust. I expressed some frustration. I told them that there's areas where I need help as a mayor, particularly with our officer shortage. We know the answer. I need your help. We know it's not perfect. You can always find a way to say no, but we're going to have to pick our poison, folks. You want officers or don't you? I've got the answer. We can do it. We're trying to hire actuarials right now to show that it's not going to damage the pension program. Nobody wants to do that. But it was evident to me when we walked into the committee last year with that bill, it was dead on arrival. We got to do better than that. There's just things that we can do, and so I just told them, and then I asked them for their expertise. Listen, these are citizen legislators. These are people that take time away from their families and businesses to serve. They work hard. There's a lot of detail. Good policy is hard to craft. The devil's in the details, and so I would be remiss to say tell them what every single detail is, but we can tell them what we need done and let them do their work. And those are the conversations that I had. I basically asked for help.
Obviously, people at home have heard this over and over again. Mm-hmm. So what?
Right. So enough already. Enough already. We've talked about it for too long. Let's get it done. The community demands it. I've seen one too many officers wheel down the hallway on a bloody gurney. Tired of it. We got to get this thing fixed.